the frozen wastelands of Manchuria, the snow falls quietly over the fields of Harbin, China. Beneath the frozen ground lies a secret Japan tried to bury. No graves, no names, only whispers of what once stood here, a place of science turned slaughterhouse. They called it Unit 731. Officially, it was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. But behind its gates, men in white coats dissected the living. And the only thing purer than their experiments was their cruelty. Some say the snow there still remembers, every breath that froze, every heart that stopped, and every secret the world tried to forget. This is the story Japan never wanted the world to tell, the Forgotten Atrocities of Unit 731. It began in the 1930s. Japan's empire was expanding, hungry for land, resources, and dominance. And in the mind of one man, a new weapon was forming. General Shiro Ishii, a brilliant military doctor, a man obsessed with disease and control. Ishii believed the next great war would not be fought with bullets, but with bacteria. He convinced the Imperial Army to build a research base in occupied Manchuria, a place far from Tokyo's eyes, where no one would question what he did. Officially, it was called the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. Unofficially, it was a death factory disguised as science. Behind barbed wire and high walls, Ishii gathered doctors, soldiers, and scientists, men who believed they were above morality. And soon they would prove how right and how wrong he was. Inside the compound, science became something unrecognizable. They called the prisoners Maruta, meaning logs, because to the men of Unit 731, they were not people, but objects. Some were Chinese civilians, others Korean, Russian, even a few Allied soldiers. They were brought here to die in the name of discovery. Ishii's team froze limbs to study frostbite, then shattered the flesh with sticks, watching the bone turn to ice dust. They injected prisoners with plague, anthrax, and cholera to see how long a human could survive. Others were dissected alive, without anesthesia, so scientists could observe infection in real time. Every breath, every scream, recorded as data in a lab notebook. To them, this was not murder. It was research, and in the sterile silence of those rooms, humanity froze, long before the bodies did. They called them logs, because even their names were burned away. But every log was a person, a teacher, a farmer, a mother. One survivor remembered a woman brought in while pregnant. They infected her to see if the disease could pass to the unborn child. When she begged for her baby's life, the doctors wrote notes and continued the experiment. Another man recalled how his brother vanished from their village. Years later, he recognized his coat folded neatly in a pile outside the compound's incinerator. For every experiment recorded in Ishii's notebooks, there was a story that never got told. No funerals, no graves, only ashes scattered in the Manchurian snow. And still, the world would not know their names. In August of 1945, Japan surrendered. Cities lay in ruins. The war was over, but inside Unit 731, destruction was only beginning. As Soviet forces closed in, Ishii gave his final order: erase everything. Documents were burned, prisoners were executed, buildings set ablaze. By the time Allied forces arrived, there was nothing left but ashes and silence. Ishii vanished, along with his team. And when the U.S. uncovered what had happened, they made a decision as cold as the experiments themselves. In exchange for Ishii's research, The United States granted him immunity. The data was too valuable to destroy. The scientists who had murdered thousands walked free. Some went on to lead medical schools. Others lived quiet lives under false names. Justice was never served. Herein lies the moment where history betrays morality. The war had ended, but the silence had just begun. For decades, Unit 731 was a rumor, a ghost story whispered among those who had seen too much. Japan's government denied it. The West ignored it. And the survivors carried the silence alone. But truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. In the 1980s, Japanese journalists began uncovering secret files, dusty records marked with the imperial seal. Former soldiers, near death, started to confess. Their hands trembled as they spoke of what they had done, and the screams they could never forget. Families in China came forward too, clutching fragments of clothing, faded photos, and memories that never healed. Little by little, the veil lifted. What was once dismissed as wartime propaganda was proven to be real. The ghosts of Harbin had begun to speak, and their whispers became history's accusation. Decades passed. The world moved on. Skyscrapers rose over the ashes, and the name Unit 731 vanished like smoke. But for those who survived, time did not heal. Nightmares became their inheritance. Their children grew up hearing screams that were never recorded, carried through generations like an unseen curse. Historians whispered. Governments avoided questions. Some records were destroyed, others hidden. And in the quiet halls of academia, the truth struggled to breathe. America, in its hunger for knowledge, granted immunity to many of the men behind the horrors. Their data, the results of human agony, became the foundation for medical progress. Justice was traded for science. Every cure carries a shadow, and sometimes that shadow screams. Harbin. Today, it's a city filled with life, bright lights, laughter, progress. But beneath its soil, the dead still whisper. Every year, a handful of survivors, their faces weathered by memory, return here to remember what the world tried to forget. They say ghosts only linger where justice never came. If that's true, then the skies over Harbin will never truly be silent. Unit 731 wasn't just a facility. It was proof that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears a lab coat. Sometimes it smiles. History hides many things. But the truth, it rots beneath the silence. And that is the sinister secret of Unit 731.